All right. So shall we start since it's already 5, a little bit later? so today we have about 1 hour together to learn about, the impactful CEO with, how do I say your name? Aline. Okay. And so I'm Dr. O. I'm currently a COO of operation of Harbor Space at UTCC, oversee the operation of Harbor Space at UTCC. And it's our honor to have Aline here with us to teach the students here for 3 weeks. And this is your last week here. And I heard great story about her. We had a chat one day, and I thought, what she does could be very, very beneficial for people in Thailand, the students, the CEOs, the companies in Thailand. So I invited her to do a space talk, and we share it on YouTube Live, and you can watch it later as well. So we all can learn what Aline can do to the CEOs and the people in companies in Thailand. And so today I'm going to break the session into 3 parts. So the first part, I'm going to let Aline talk about, what she can do and what she, her model of her work. That's about 30 minutes, and then I'll go through another 10 minutes or 20 minutes of talking to her of what have she done, her experience, and the last 10 minutes on Q&A. If there's Q&A question from the people in the audience back at home, you can type it. I have a team here shooting me questions from you all from home. So should I start with you for the first 30 minutes? Okay.
Great. Thank you. Thank you so much. Where's the online people? Which camera do I look at? Oh, hello. Wonderful. Thank you so much. I'm really happy to be here and to share some of my ideas about leadership. I'll just use this. Let me just see. Yes. So, great. Thank you so much, everyone, for being here. I'd like to talk to you today about the 3 C's of influential reputations. I might stand up. Is that okay? Is it okay can they still see me online? Yes? Great. Okay. So I'll start by talking to you about Michael. So Michael was known in the industry. He's a senior consultant providing wonderful tech solutions and has built up a tremendous amount of, tremendous reputation in his field. And everyone really wanted to work with Michael. And so Michael's dream was to become a CIO of a particular company. And so he was building his career, 1 year every year, developing, solutions for a lot of different organizations at the consulting firm that he is. And he was trying to get his way up to become a CIO. And so he got that opportunity. He got that opportunity to become a CIO. And even the people that knew that he would join were so excited that they got the Michael from the industry. And so here he goes, Michael trying to be, this new CIO, fulfilling his dream. And everybody on the team in this new organization that he joined also super excited, to be working with him. Within 2 weeks, all of that changed. Michael, in the first week, fired 5 key personnels. He asked for a lot of, strategies to be put aside and develop his own. He never really took the time to sit down and speak to anybody in the first 2 weeks. And so that same team that was so excited to be working with Michael suddenly feared their job. And they would go to their boss, the boss of Michael, and ask, what would happen to my job now? We were so excited to be working with Michael. We have no idea what's going on. What is happening? And so I want to share with you this quote. Never really took the time to sit down and speak to anybody in the first 2 weeks. And so it's wonderful to hear myself twice. So I'll share with you this quote by Warren Buffett. It takes 20 years to build a reputation and 5 minutes to ruin it. And, if you think about that really, you'll do things differently. And that's really what I want to talk about today. And so what is it that we can do differently to build and manage and maintain and sustain our relationship so that, what happened to Michael, doesn't happen. By the way, what happens to Michael happens all the time. And so this is, why I really want to help, individuals, leaders develop, their influential reputation for lasting impact. Hello, hello, hi, come on in, welcome. So what is reputation? Reputation is the belief and the opinion that is generally held about something or someone. Sorry. Yeah. So the reputation is the belief that is held about something or someone. And around the world, a CEO or a leader or a company reputation amounts to about 44% of it's a market value of the business. That's a huge amount of number to be putting in the hands, a power in the hands of people that are building their perception, on you. And so looking at these numbers, we understand that reputation is really important to develop. Why is reputation so important? 87%, of having a great reputation as a CEO in a company attracts investors. So if you are a startup, founder and you need money, and you are known to have a good reputation and you want to enhance it and you want to attract more investors, you want to work on developing the 3 C's of influential reputations because you want that percentage of investors working with you. 83% generates positive media attention. We'll talk a little bit about PR and the changes in PR, but having a great CEO reputation really helps you generate positive media attention, so you're not really relying on the PR agency or the press releases or the PR of the past. 83% affords you crisis protection. This is a really, really big one, especially in today's world where anything can change in a second on social media, particularly, when your reputation is in the hands of somebody else. So when you do have a good CEO reputation, when you do have a great reputation as a leader, you're also able to attract new employees, and we'll talk a little bit about that as well. One of the most expensive things that a company goes through when they have to hire and rehire their staff, right? And so if you have a good CEO reputation and people want to work with you, then you have the ability to retain them, if you have a really good, reputation. So those are some numbers that we'll just continue talking about. So in the past, this is how reputation gets built. You pay media, so you buy advertising, print, radio, TV, digital ads now, and that's really one way that you can shape the perception of others and build your reputation through that. And there was earned media, which is when you work with a PR agency or, a third party, will write about you, or if you are, mentioned by Harvard Business Review or Forbes, that's earned media because you didn't really ask for it. Somebody's, giving their opinion about you. And if somebody else is talking about you and not you talking about yourself, that's quite powerful. So historically, that's how reputation is built, through paid media and earned media. But a lot has changed over the years, and particularly the rise of social media. A lot of your reputation is now in the hands of people that can be sitting on their couch talking about you, and that holds a lot of power. The voice of the consumer has written quite a bit, than before when it was just all about paid media and earned media. The changes to the news media is something I really want to point you to, because in the earned media space, we used to rely on developing great relationships with journalists to write great things about us. So our work in traditional PR was to really build those relationships so that they can write about us. But guess what? Like, a lot of them are now no longer having their job, like the landscape of news media has changed so drastically. Also, you've got less people writing, right, with more stories to write, and no time to do it. So what they do is they go into social media, they go into your own platforms to look for the information. So if you look at the last one, the editor back in the day was the one that called the shots, dictated the angle of the story that would write. It's now the user. We have the ability to shape the narrative, and the stories that are being written about us. What that requires is a change of leadership behavior to really participate, in this kind of change that's happening to building reputations. That means you got to take that mask off. A lot of us hide behind, the titles that we have, and it's really important today to show who you are in order to build a reputation that sustains, any changes that could happen. A lot of this talk is about, being authentic, right? It's about showing who we are, but we don't know how to do that. We don't know how to be authentic because we go to school to learn how to become a certain position, and we don't have the comfort level within ourselves to actually show who we are, right? And so it raised a big question for me as somebody who used to do traditional BR. How do I help my clients build reputations that sustain the test of time, not just the current position that they're in? So the big question was, do you know who you are? Do you know who you are? A lot of leaders don't. They will tell you, they will answer right away, of course I know who I am. But most of us don't know who we are. In fact, 10 to 15% of us actually know who we are, based on the research from Harvard Business Review. So the premise of my talk today, the premise of my model, the premise of why I shifted my career from consulting to coaching is because of this. What got you here won't get you there. So you have a great job. Now, how are you going to keep it? You got a great position. How are you going to keep it? And how are you going to get more people to join you in that great position? That's the premise of the 3 C's of influential reputations that, I'd really want to bring your attention to. So in the past, it's all about delivering results. It's, you meet, a target, you meet a project, you meet the goal, you bring X amount of money into the business, you get the result, you get the title, you get the promotion, you get the seniority, you get the responsibility. And suddenly you realize that's not enough because there's so many things that happen, crises, mergers and acquisition that's gone bad, culture fit, a new hire that's not working, somebody else is talking badly about you, somebody sitting in their couch, writing all sorts of reports about, yourself. You're no longer measured solely by, these results. They can disappear in a heartbeat. So how do you sustain your reputation? And so my entire work shifted. I needed to ask those big questions. Do you know who you are? And I needed to shift the focus for the clients that I was helping from the results that we see on the tree to the things that we don't see, to the roots of who they are, to really help them build that future, and their leadership and sustain their job for a long time. So I built a model on how to build influential reputations on how to build reputations for influence and impact. And the model starts with awareness. So the first principle of my model is lead yourself first. You cannot become a leader of anybody if you don't know how to lead yourself. It's a really, really important piece of the puzzle. And so what does that mean to lead yourself first? Is to know who you are. Is to develop the awareness, and gain the clarity of who you are. That means knowing your values. There's a lot of us, if you were to ask us, who we are, we can say, I am a teacher at Harbor Space, right? But there's so much more to who I am, for example, as a teacher at Harbor Space. My values, my purpose, the reason why I love teaching so much. My thinking patterns, the way that I think, what are the patterns that move my vision forward, and what are the patterns that block my vision from moving? What's my impact on others? That's a big one that, a lot of leaders don't really quite know that they need to value or that they need to understand. A great example that I always share is, one of my clients, a startup founder, loves to work in chaos, and he's really good at it. Organized chaos. He loves it. And so he can go, pressure and from one project to another, wonderful, he can do it. But that pressure that he puts on his team, the team that a few of them are introverted, a few of them that need structure, a few of them that need direction, and he doesn't even quite understand the impact of his love for chaos. What does that have on the growth of the project that he's part of? And so understanding yourself and then understanding your impact on others is really important. Knowing your core values, we talked about that in the first week here of the course, and trying to figure out what are the 2 feet that you stand on? What are the 2 things that are non-negotiable for you, that make you who you are, that if you were to go like this, you'd fall off, right? So it's really important to understand what is it that you stand on? What are your core values? Aligning yourself, your purpose, the meaning behind, what you do, the jobs that you take, the direction that you want to take it to, your standards, your attitudes, your beliefs, that's what makes you who you are. And so there's the awareness of the self, but then there's external awareness of how you're also impacting others. That's really important part of developing reputations. So I'll go back to this. When there's 85 of us, not aware of who we are, we're basically operating blind spots. Now, if you're driving, what's in the blind spot in your car, in your view, that's quite dangerous. So imagine what that would do in leadership. When you're not aware of your impact on others, that can really generate a lot of risk for your business and your reputation. What are some of the blind spots that I've seen in my career? Overconfidence, toxic positivity, lack of empathy, need for control, profitability center. Your entire value system is on how much money you're bringing the company. That's too much pressure on the business. Poor delegation, the needing of credit, imposter syndrome, sabotaging thoughts, just some of the blind spots that a lot of us aren't even aware of until we do the work to have awareness, of who we are. So when I take my clients on the build awareness stage, we get clarity. And clarity is incredibly important, for you to know what makes you who you are. But guess what? Clarity alone is not enough. You might know how you are, but until you start to work on the things that you want to change from the clarity that you got, it's just something that you know. And so I take my clients on a second sort of principle, which is adapting your behavior. It's fine-tuning your approach. It's looking at your sabotaging pattern. It's looking at that gap between your identity and how people are perceiving you, and really shortening the space between that. And so that principle of fine-tuning your approach really means that you have a mindset that is all about growth. It's all about learning and adopting that mindset that there's always something that I can improve on. I haven't arrived and I'm now the CIO or the CEO and I'm good to go from now on. There's this continuous learning that you want to take people through. One of the best skills that most of us don't know how to do is listening. Most of us listen this way. When somebody's talking and then the other person is already thinking about what to say. So we know that our ears work because we can hear, but we're not really understanding what the other person is saying. And so there's 3 levels. That one that I just showed you is level 1. Level 1 is we're in our head, like somebody can be talking to us and you can be physically there and you can be nodding, but you're not actually hearing because you're thinking about how does this relate to me? What can I say? What more value can I add? What do I say next? What question do I need to ask? And that's fine, by the way. I mean, when somebody's asking you a question, you better be in level 1. So it's not bad to be in level 1. But when you're building influence and when you're trying to manage your reputation, it's really important to get into level 2 listening. Level 2 listening is when you are really focused on the words that people are actually saying. You're really trying to understand them. You're curious about what they're saying. You try your best to not think in your head. It doesn't matter that you have something to add. It doesn't matter that you might know better than them. It doesn't matter that they're wrong and you're right and all of those things. It matters that in the moment you are enhancing your reputation by listening to them and focusing on the words that they say. And that's what drives your questions, to continue engaging in that relationship and making them feel that they're seen and heard. Level 3, if you put the mic here, you might pick up on these little noises, you might pick up on energy, you might pick up on feeling. One of my favorite things about level 3 is you're in a meeting as a leader and everybody around the room and you're like, is everybody getting it? And everybody's like, yes, everybody's getting it. But you've got the people that are kind of looking down but they're saying yes. Your job in level 3 is to pick up on those nuances, right, as a leader, because that's how you help somebody feel seen and acknowledged and included even when they are afraid to do so. Right? That's what level 3 does in terms of listening. So those are some of the skills that we work on when we are fine-tuning our approach. My favorite thing about this anagram, to listen is to be silent. And it's so difficult to do, particularly for the leaders that are like, I know how to help you. I'm going to give you the solution right now. But that's the biggest misconception about leadership, is that you have to provide solution. You don't. First, or let me just say, yeah, you do, but not right away. Like, stay curious a little bit longer. Maybe just be silent, let them talk, ask them more questions, give them, like an ability to think for themselves, even if you know what the answer might be. But you're building longevity. You're helping them be autonomous, you're helping them develop their own ability to think for themselves, and you're solving the problem. It's like killing two birds with one stone. You get what you want, but maybe at a slower rate, right? And you're helping the other person. That's building great reputations. So I don't think the gifts are working. He's supposed to go like this, but it's fine. So curiosity, I mean, if you were to just embody curiosity in your body, people will be like, that's curiosity, or you could be like excited. But one of my favorite things about curiosity, when we learn how to be curious, is that there's no way you can judge somebody if you're curious, if you're actually curious. If you're judging the person and you're trying to be curious, you're not curious. Because if you're actually curious, there's no way you can judge them. You'd just be fascinated by what they said. And you just continuously ask them questions and help to understand them. So another thing about fine-tuning your approach is listening. It's being curious, but it's also mental fitness. We take our physical muscles to the gym, we build a bicep, all of those things. But we have to understand that we can take our mind to the gym. That's another aspect of fine-tuning our approach. That is really important. Now, a lot of people would go like, how, why? I don't understand this mental fitness game. The reason why is because we think 60,000 thoughts a day. 60,000 thoughts a day. 80% of them are negative, and 95% of them are on a loop. So it's like, woo, it's like you're trying to catch one, you can't. It's 60,000. So you need the mental muscle, you need the mental fitness to be able to catch a thought that is sabotaging you or a thought that's helping you move forward. So that's why mental fitness is really, really important. And to understand that thoughts drive your emotions. Not your emotions that drive your thoughts. You think a thought, it's moving 60,000 of them, so you think, you believe it, you feel, and that extends into your behavior, and then it goes on and on and on. So it's really important then to have mental fitness, to understand what is it that you're thinking about, and to understand how you're thinking. Because not everything you think is true. But we think everything we think is true. But not everything we think is true. And so it's really, really important to grasp that. Because when you have a thought, you have a choice. You can be in that reactive, I'll believe it, I'm not catching it, I don't know that I'm thinking bad, I'll believe everything that I'm thinking. And so it takes you into reactive mode, it takes you into an autopilot mode, you're limited in your next move, and you just generate a lot of stress for yourself and others. When you're in a proactive, when you're mentally fit, you have those muscles that you're exercising, you can actually be proactive about the thought that you just thought. You can go, is this really true? I don't think it's true, right? And then you just move on. You're in choice. You're free to consider a conflict that you're in right now without it letting it affect you, based on the thought that you choose about the conflict that you're in. So that's really important to grasp, because particularly in a crisis and negative media and people are talking badly about you online and you're the leader and you just want to react because you just can't help it, because it's not true what they're saying. Fact, it's not true what they're saying. But you reacting that quickly is going to tarnish your reputation very quickly. So building mental fitness to proactively consider the thoughts that are happening in your brain when people are negatively talking about you, and that's just one example. It could be any other crisis, that is going on. So the reason I work on this so much, with clients on the second, portion of the model, which is fine-tune your approach, it's to help them have self-management. So it doesn't matter whether somebody is poking you, somebody's talking badly about you, a crisis happened, there's an investor that's pulling out at the last minute. It doesn't shake you. It doesn't shake you. You really build confidence when you go through the skills of listening, curiosity, of knowing how to manage conflict, of knowing that you have control over your thoughts and then therefore your emotions and your feelings. And so when we get to the model, now we have, the clarity of who we are, and we've done the work, continuously do the work on fine-tuning, our approach and adapting our behavior. We get confidence, from that work. This is tough work. It's not easy to face some of the things that we want to change the behavior, to really look at committing to practicing mental fitness. The same way that, if you have a goal to go to the gym, that you would do that, it's really hard work. But it's so sustainable because when you have the clarity of who you are and then the confidence in how you show up, this is now when you're in a great position to build your visibility. Now, visibility in the past, when I used to be just branding and crisis management and reputation management, is easy to build, to be honest with you. I mean, now I think my 15-year-old niece can develop, a PR strategy, And so I don't think that's the difficult work. The difficult work is how do you sustain your visibility and your external reputation when it's out there? And so how do you shape perception? How would you do that? And when you have the clarity of who you are and the confidence in how you show up, you're now in a great position to shape that perception and create that wow aspect. And so I often ask, my clients, and, this week we've been doing a lot of this visibility work here, at school, and I ask my students, here, if somebody's Googling you right now, what are they saying? What are they seeing? Sorry. What are they seeing? It's an important question, right? Because it tells you, is what they see who I am? And then if I know who I am, and then what I see on page 1 of Google is not representative of who I am, I see there's an opportunity to bridge that gap and shape the perception, take control of the narrative of who I am, and not rely on just somebody's opinion or somebody's experience of me one time, but just sort of, help them, shape the perception of you. A lot of reputation is about what people say about you when you're not in the room. Now, you won't know what people are saying about you when you're not in the room, but you want to consider that when you are trying to build a reputation of leadership. Is what are people saying? What might they be saying, like when I'm not in the room, and bridging that gap. I mean, your reputation is indeed what people say about you when you're not in the room, but you can shape it. You can participate in it by showing up visibly online, by producing content, by really talking about who you are. Now that you're aware and you're clear and you're confident in who you are, you have that freedom to show up, online and help people understand you. So now we go back to paid media, earned media, and there's a concept of owned media. This is you owning your own platforms. I mean, everybody these days is a media channel of their own, and so the quicker you get to that stage, the better. But first, please be aware of who you are, have the clarity, and work on yourself, to develop certain skills. When you get to owned media, we're talking your websites, your mobile sites, your newsletters, your social media content, podcasts, videos, books, blogs. You own all of that. And when they're public, they're part of the perception that people are taking about you. It could be that somebody's written something about you as well, and you have that third-party credibility, fantastic. But now they also have that. And by the way, that journalist that's looking for stories, you're helping them because they don't need to call you, they don't need to set up an appointment, they're there. They can see everything about you. If you've got videos, you've got pictures, you've got some information, you've helped them, and you're quicker to be part of their story than somebody who doesn't. Content is king. Bill Gates said that in 1996. It still rings true. Content. You've got to drive content when you're trying to become visible. Tell stories, share ideas. Your thought leadership is really important. Why that is? 94% believe that visible CEOs or leaders enhance the brand. So if you're visible and you're sharing content and you're sharing who you are, it helps your brand. 82% are much more likely to trust a company and their CEO if they're visible. That's really important. 77% are likely to buy from you if your values are clear and they're being communicated online. 78% of employees actually want to work for someone who is willing to be visible. That's data from Comscore, and it's really important, powerful data. And so the work is to bridge that gap. Bridge that gap between who you know yourself to be and how you want to be perceived in the world. And you can by working on your own media and developing, the visibility strategies that you can do it. So the entire model of reputation now is very much based on these 3 C's of influential reputation: clarity, confidence, credibility. Credibility is when who you are, is exactly how you're showing up. Perfect alignment. That's how you're credible. Credibility is not necessarily just what people are talking about you. Credibility is how are you showing up in person, in a text, or online. That's credibility. So there isn't that gap between who you are and how somebody might be thinking about you. So clarity, confidence, and credibility, these are the 3 C's of influential reputations. And so my message to you is take an active role in building your reputation so that you can have lasting influence and impact. With that, thank you so much.
Thank you. Okay, now. Thank you very much. That was I took a lot of note listening to you. And I'm sure the audience have a lot of questions too. But before we go on to the questions, I think one of the things I'm curious and I want to hear is your experience working with the CEO. You don't have to tell us the name of the CEO or the company, but like stories of how was the process like? What did you do with them, and what was the pro and con, the struggles, the things, the outcome? Can you share a little bit about that with us?
Thank you. Sorry. So I think in executive coaching, it's really tough because you want help, but you're so resistant to help. And I think one of the biggest sort of roadblocks is how do you build that trust, with somebody to really want to work on some of the things that, either somebody in HR is telling them, they need to work on, or whether themselves they can see it. And I think, the biggest issue is the resistance to change. It's really, really difficult to change, even though you might, logically, know that that is what you need in terms of personal development, in terms of, learning and improving, but it is always that resistance to change in the beginning. And so working on building that trust is one of the most important things. And so I think as a certified executive coach, I hold confidentiality with my clients, and that is one of the things that works the best, is because you need to create a safe space. I mean, we hear so much, I think, in the industry now about psychological safety and why people are quitting because they don't feel safe. And it's the same concept. So if you're in a conversation with somebody and you're trying to sort of challenge them by asking them a lot of powerful questions, or challenging the way that they think, or perhaps finding out that they have imposter syndrome or their impact on their team is negative, you want to have that safe space so that they can slowly build that or take down the resistance to change.
Does it take a long time for you to finish the whole coaching session until you become from person A to like A+, for example?
Yeah, I think that's also one of like the quickest things that people ask. How quickly can I become, an influential and impactful leader? It's up to the individual, and I think the first part, of the program, I mean, I do this over 18 months to 2 years, really, because it does require time. This isn't easy work. But I think what slows it down or makes it quicker sometimes is in the beginning stages, because there's assessments that we do. And so Hogan assessment is one that I value a lot and my clients value a lot, because it tells you the difference between what you think about yourself and how you are showing up to others. And so a lot of us are very surprised, and that slows the progress down, because a lot of us are very, very surprised by what we get by these assessments. So then a lot more time is spent on, what's getting in the way of you accepting that this is reality, or what sabotaging thought might be hindering you from moving on and, really changing the way that you're showing up. So it depends really, but
Okay.
Typically, I mean, I would never say that you can get this, in 1 to 2 sessions. There's no way.
And that's an individual work, right?
Pardon me?
That's an individual, you and that CEO
Yes.
person one-on-one. You
Yes.
develop it
Yeah.
together for
Yes.
the whole 18 months or 2
Yeah,
years maybe.
exactly.
And do usually people, do the companies send the CEO to you, or the CEO raise their hands up and say, I want to do, are there difference between them? when
Yes,
you work with them?
I mean, there's both. So there's sometimes an HR, department that, asks for an executive coach, particularly for the high potential they're trying to set up to become a CEO. So if they have identified some great leaders in their business, then they hire executive coaches to help them along the journey, which is wonderful, because what got you here won't get you there, and I think if they can help them as they're getting there through executive coaching and learning those kind of skills. So it does come sometimes from the HR department for particularly the ones that they've identified as high potentials. And then it comes sometimes from the individuals themselves, either for the vision that they're trying to have for their business. Also, if they're a startup founder and they are trying at the beginning stages, trying to set up their business from a place that is based on their values. And then sometimes it's about, the individual that's just looking at their career differently, and maybe they're in a transition, and maybe it's no longer about how well do I do as a CEO, but it's like, what's next for me? So it depends.
So it's like they want to do the self-development for them to move forward.
Yes.
Okay. And do you ever do like group work kind of thing? And also you help companies to, when companies have to select a person to come and grooming from you, I'm sure there's many people to select. How do they know which one is the right one to do it first and the other ones wait a bit later? So
you mean the individuals?
The selection of from the company to select who it is that they want you to develop. I'm sure because you're talking about matching the company CEO and the values and things like that. I'm sure someone is more suitable than others, maybe.
Yes, I mean, every HR department will have an idea of their high potentials, and that's not my job to identify who is the high potential. If they're coming to me individually, that's a different scenario. But I'm not the one that decides inside the company who needs the executive coaching. I mean, there are executive coaches that work inside companies. That's not me. So I am an external coach, and so I don't have that view of who inside the company requires that. There are some coaches that work in different ways where they do management consulting, and so they'll come and then they'll help you identify, and then they'll coach the individual. But from my perspective, they've already been identified, and I get to help them, as they go through their seniority.
Have any question from the audience? If you do, please go ahead and raise your hand. Otherwise, I'll just keep on shooting questions.
Yes.
So have you ever done like group
Yes.
session for a company?
Yes, I also do that. The large part of my business is one-on-one, but I also do group coaching. And sometimes what I'll do is I'll break apart the model depending on the need. So whether it's a visibility workshop, whether it's a sabotage workshop, whether it's a self-management workshop. So I fall into the category of self-leadership, self-management, those kind of ideas. And so it depends on the need, and so sometimes there's organizations that would have their team sort of trained together, and then mental fitness is another one. Just depends on the need, but my program is possible to divide in many different ways if it's not just one-on-one.
Okay. I think people are, there's some comments about interesting reputation building model, the 3 C's. I think there's many interesting things about it. So if I go through the C's, because people are talking about the 3 C's and how interesting it is. So the first C is clarity, right?
Yeah.
So my first question is, how hard is it for a person to know who they are? And what do we have to do with them?
Yeah, it's the most difficult thing, and it doesn't end. So it's continuous. So I'm sorry to tell you, but you're always going to have to know who you are. Continuously grow, because if you're in a now new position, you're knowing yourself at a different level. If you are 5 years older, you have to know yourself in a different way. If you move to a different country, you have to know yourself in a different way. So, if there's any piece of advice for young leaders, is build that muscle of getting to know yourself and not stop building it, because it's one of the most important things that you'll have to rely on as you grow in your leadership. But it is very difficult work to do. My mother used to always say, nothing good comes easy. And I really believe her. Yeah.
Now you're talking about young leaders. does that make difference between grooming the older one and the younger one? So basically, better to groom younger, or is it
Yeah.
harder to groom the older one? I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, it's an interesting question. I think for me, I would just love for anyone at any age, whenever they come at it, whether they're in their 50s, 60s, and now they're like, oh, I need to develop myself, or if you're 18 and you're like, you know what, personal development would be great. Anybody at any time, if they get to that point, welcome. Because it's one of the best things that you can do. Everybody has a different rhythm. And, some people will come to know that that's really important later on in life, and that's okay, But I think I'd really like to just work with anybody to help them. The young, I mentor some young people in their 20s, and I find that to be really interesting because I imagine, when they are 40, 50, 60, and I think, okay, great, that they are beginning to build those bridges, to know who they are. But it's hard to say which one is, better. Yeah, I don't know. As long as they're open to it is what I consider better. Yeah.
And you also talk about silent and confident yourself, and you have mental fitness. Can you share maybe some example of cases that you found because I know these days a lot of things happen on social media, and people got distracted a lot when they heard or they see something written about them that is not true. And how do CEOs you say you should keep silent, but when it's not true, you want to say, should they ever say, cases like that you share with us that happens in your coaching?
Yeah. I think one of the biggest things is to not react immediately, because when you're reacting immediately, you're reacting based on emotions. And so you want to assess your reaction. You actually want to know if your reaction is true. So just because you're reacting doesn't mean that it's actually true. And that's what I challenge my clients all the time, is that to just challenge themselves, and so this is the work of identifying the sabotaging patterns of why we believe certain things that we believe. And so I think my advice is just to slow down the reaction, and really try to understand within yourself if this is true. Because if a thought is dictating your emotion, then I'd like you to tell me what is the thought that's making you feel that way. And so if it's the thought that I can't believe they did this to me, or I can't, this is not fair, or whatever the case may be, looking through that thought process and assessing it and understanding whether it's true or not will help you slow down your reaction to it. And then I'm not at all opposed to talking, whenever there's a conflict or whenever there's an issue, but I just would rather slow down the reaction to it.
Okay. Yes. Me. Go ahead. You first.
So this is a questions from people watching online.
Yes.
As ordinary employees who are with a routine job every day, of course, some of them have the dreams to be a leader, to have something their own, but the job they are facing every day somehow make those dreams diminished. What are your suggestions?
Sorry, can you repeat the question?
Like the question is for ordinary employees
Yes.
who have a dream to be a leaders, but
Yeah.
then the job they are doing every day are like some small little job, silly job that
Yeah.
will not make them to be a leader at all. So what would
So the thought that they're
suggestions?
believing in their head is that
Yes.
I need to be a leader before I am a leader. Yeah. So that's the thought that I'd like to challenge, because anybody is a leader in any position. You don't need a title to be a leader. You build your leadership and you earn your leadership by, are they looking at me through the camera? Is that, yeah, because I'm answering you, but you didn't ask the question. So I'd like to I'd like to look at the person who asked that question.
Who asked the questions? Okay.
You asked. Hello, midday. Hi. Yeah, no, I think that we're all in a position of leadership, and that's how we increase our leadership, and that's how we build our reputation, and that's how we change the perception of other people and how they see us. So I think that the idea, the narrative of, oh, this is just an ordinary job, it doesn't matter for me to be a leader, is a thought that you're believing that's not true. And so you do have an impact, because even in the ordinary job, you're still doing a job and you're still influencing people to help you do a job. And so the idea is to really challenge the way that you're thinking about this.
How do you see the different cultures and different background of people impact your model as well as the process to develop them?
Yeah, that's a fantastic question. Thank you for asking it. Absolutely, there are cultures that look at hierarchy as a respectful thing, right? And so they look at authority as this is the way that we do it, And I think part of actively listening to the culture in which you are coaching or you're helping is very important to assess how you're showing up. But it doesn't change the fundamental that we all need to have clarity, we all need to have confidence, and we all need to have credibility. But it's the way that I would coach somebody in the culture that they're in to listen, to actively listen to what matters to them, to ask them questions that would challenge them. But certainly there's a lot of differences. And sometimes, I think that just because this is the way that it is, doesn't mean that it cannot be changed. And so it depends on what is the leader trying to change, and what is the vision, and what is the direction of the organization, and looking at what could be stopping the growth. And sometimes it is about, old systems and what the new generation and what the new way of doing business requires. And so it's a way to meet the person halfway without forgetting the differences in the culture that they come. But it doesn't change the fundamental work of developing a reputation from a place of clarity and confidence and credibility. Does that help?
So maybe another question.
Yes. Yeah.
From your experience coaching, what are the major obstacles that you faced, or any obstacle for you to not being able to, basically your failure
Yeah.
in coaching? What are the major things that caused the failure in coaching that you cannot change your clients?
Yeah. I remember a client fired me when I asked them the question, aside from your title, why should anybody follow you? And he said, I don't want to work with you. And so I think I still defend that question, because I'd like to know, other than your title, why should people follow you? That's my big question in leadership. And so he fired me because he believed, he had a belief system that just because he held that title, that people should listen to him. But he wasn't getting the results, right? And so that was one of the biggest roadblocks. Now, I will tell you that 3 months later, he called me and he says, that question still haunts me, and I'd like to see if we can work together, on that. But most times it is the limiting beliefs that we have. So his belief system is that, I am this title, and so people should listen to me because of that. So it is limiting beliefs, I think, one of the biggest roadblocks, to it. And some people aren't ready to challenge their belief, and maybe they will later, and maybe they won't. But sometimes the limiting beliefs, the sabotaging sort of patterns that we have, the blind spots, that we have, or sometimes CEOs are a lot about solution driving, or leaders. And so trying to challenge them that they don't have to give a solution is sometimes a big roadblock, because their value system is very much based, unless I am solving a problem, I am not successful. And so changing their belief system to consider that leadership is about solving the problem and helping the other person develop is sometimes a big roadblock as well, in my experience. Yes.
So Michael built up his reputation for 20 years and ruined it in 5 minutes. So as an experienced leader, what advice would you like to give to Michael?
Yes. So someone like Michael, which happens all the time because we want to hurry up into providing value, right? Is to do nothing. There's a lot of research in the first, 90 days of a new job is to take in information, is to ask questions, is to meet one-on-one with people, especially if you're leading a team, to schedule one-on-one meetings to get to know the people for who they are, to make them feel seen, heard, and understood. Because you're getting a lot of information by doing that. I think, the other day we were practicing questions, how to ask questions in conversations, and I asked one of the students, "Is the sky blue?" And he says, I said, "What color is the sky?" And he said, "The sky is blue." And I said, "Oh, okay, cool. What? Tell me more about that. I feel like there's more information." And then he's like saying, "Well, I kind of like these clouds that are coming in and they're forming. It kind of makes me think like if I'm baking a cookie, I prefer to bake the cookie than buy the cookie." I have no idea what he's talking about, but as somebody that's asking him the question, I know that if I have a project that is from scratch, building something from scratch, he would be the best person to put on that project because I now understood his value system and how important it is for him to bake a cookie, not buy a cookie. So I think in conversation, when we're asking somebody and taking that time and listening and being quiet and really actively listen to understand their values, we gain a lot of information and it helps us make our jobs better. So first order of business is to listen, and ask a lot of questions.
Thank you.
Sure.
All right, my question is there a case that you coach a CEO for what you said 18 months,
Yeah.
and then they train by you, got to the system, and then maybe 1 year later he said, "Hey, I learned all that, but then I stopped working on it for 6 months. I need you again," something like that. Does
Yeah.
it happen to you? Because most of the time I believe that for self-development, the most difficult thing is not to learn, not learning, but about practicing. So do they practice your method? Or is
Yeah.
there any case for you?
Sure. I mean, there are a lot of people that go to the gym for 6 months and they do it every day and they get the results and then they go, "Okay, I'm good. And then a year later they're like, "Oh my God, I have to go to the gym again." It's the same concept, practice is really the most important thing. One of the benefits of coaching is accountability, right? And same thing in the gym. When you hire a personal trainer, you kind of get better results because you got that person that's like, holding you accountable to it. And so having a coach is great for accountability, but personally, my view on that is I'd like you to be as accountable to yourself as possible. And so I always work with CEOs for a short amount of time, and then I'd like for them to test it out on their own. And if they need to work with me again, then it would be like once every 6 months or once every couple of years to have that reset so that they can come back into, working on themselves. Because then it's not sustainable. Then you're just relying on the coach, to help you do that. And I really want to push back into the client to make sure that they are connected to themselves and have that ability to take themselves to the gym and practice. But it does happen, yes, of course, because just like the physical gym, like it happens. So it depends on many factors in life. Who knows what could happen that would take the person off their game? But the more that they build the game, the more that they have that ability to come back to it.
Thank you.
Sure.
Okay, so I'm not sure if you have more time for questions, but so I remember the image of the valley, the two sides and the bridge.
Yes.
That bridge. So one side is how you I guess being authentic, right? And the other side is how other people perceive you.
Mm-hmm.
I guess that's kind of profound. I'm just wondering, maybe can you give some examples of one of those bridges or the elements of the bridges that leaders can play with?
Yes, sure. I mean, a lot of us project, who we want to be. So a lot of us project who we want to be, but we're not actually that. And there's a lot of research, that speaks about that. And so we talk about things that we don't actually know to be 100% true. And so the work of clarity and confidence is to get you to a place where it's actually true. So there's no longer a projection; it's actually true. And also the idea of like, you know, somebody might think something of us, and then because they either read a book, that we wrote, or, you know, they read an article that's been written about us, or somebody has said something, you know, about us, and then they meet us in person, and it's an entirely different experience. So the bridge is about, you know, how close we can get between who we are, who we know ourselves to be honestly, to the reputation that we are projecting externally. That's the work, you know, that we work on. And so in the past, it was all about building the visibility, you know, through PR strategies. And now, you know, going through the awareness and going through the, you know, the changing behaviors to get to the confidence is really the work that bridges, you know, the gap between our identity, who we know ourselves to be, and how we're actually showing up. And so that creates consistency, alignment, and credibility.
Yeah. Hi, I'm Jinda. I'm a new student of Harbor. My question is, what advice can you give to young leaders to work effectively and harmoniously with older leaders so there's no clash when it comes to seniority?
The easiest advice is ask a lot of questions. Be curious, right? Just genuinely curious, and not just about what they do, but about who they are. And I think that's, you know, one of the general sort of advice that I give to people is we often sort of think about what kind of job do I want to do, you know, what kind of impact do I want to bring to the world or my team. But it's really, really important to consider who you are. So the advice about how you would work with other leaders is also the advice about how you would work with yourself. So really do the work to listen to yourself, to really, you know, ask yourself a lot of questions. So then it would be the same with working with other people. It's to get to a level of understanding, not just in terms of their title, their job, what they do, but also like who they are. Does that help? Yeah.
Online people has two questions.
Okay.
First is from Valery Neche, and he said, I'm quite curious about the following topic. Values are the things which we tend not to change. But imagine if happens something unpredictable and the value change. What happens with the reputation?
Values don't change. Values evolve. So they might take a different meaning, right? But they never change. You know, I think they say that when we are 3 years old, you know, is who we become, you know, earlier. But then that gap grows bigger, and the work is to close the gap. We go so far away from who we actually, you know, are just as kids. I mean, I remember, you know, being a kid, and my family would say, you know, I used to run around and go like, I have a lot of ideas, I have a lot of ideas, I have a lot. And then the world's like, stop. You know, stop sharing your ideas, stop talking, like you don't talk here. And then slowly and gradually you kind of go, okay, I'll just be quiet, I won't have to say anything. And so, you know, my value is curiosity in that sense, right? To ask a lot of questions. So I don't think values change, they just evolve as you grow older. And the journey is to come back to them.
And another question is that if someone on a team is highly skilled, but not very diligent because they are currently working on a pre-seed startup and have a full-time job, what techniques do you recommend for the team leader to make this person more diligent?
Ask them, what would it take for them to be more diligent?
Yeah.
Open-ended questions, right? And I think instead of making the judgment, or I'm looking at the camera, sorry. Instead of making the judgment that they're diligent, try to find out if that's actually true. I think, you know, a lot of us in senior positions, we might make an assumption about somebody. And so I would just try to make sure that is in fact true, that they're not being diligent. And then I would ask them, what do they need to make their job move forward? Because they're the ones that know, you don't. And so ask the questions. Yeah.
And one more question from online. It says, while you are coaching many people, some of them might say, no, I cannot do that. They have negative thoughts about themselves. How did you do to make them change their perspectives?
I would ask them, what's behind the no? You know, I would just continue just trying to figure out what's behind the no. You know, what is it that's driving them to say no? Any other form of open-ended question to, you know, try to understand the meaning behind their no. Because no, it doesn't mean anything. So I would be curious. I'd be like, what does that mean? You know, like, what does no mean? You know, and so trying to really get into the depth of that to help them hear themselves, because no is an automatic thing sometimes, especially when we think, you know, it's difficult. And so trying to challenge them into understanding what's behind the no is a good strategy.
Okay, thank you. I think a lot of Aline's answer is based on her studies and what she said about it's evolved around, you know, checking if your thought is correct, asking to check, and then, you know, think about it and curious and ask question and find the answer from them, not from you. So that's, you know, building your own credible reputation through.
That's a wonderful summary. Thank you.
So it's our honor again to have Aline with us today, and I think we've learned a lot. Also, the online also have a lot of questions, and we can always come back and watch it on the YouTube. And then you have her email address if you're interested to ask questions more or have anything for her to help with. And she'll be very happy. And she promised that she's going to come back to Bangkok again to teach
I
here.
love Bangkok. I was just in Singapore over the weekend, and Bangkok is so much better.
Yay! Yay! Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you everyone for joining online. สวัสดีค่ะ สวัสดีค่ะ Thank you so much.